My name's Claire E. I am a recovered compulsive eater and bulimic and extremely nervous. I don't actually enjoy doing main shares very much. Still got a very big, most important piece of shit in the room complex. And yes, I've just been really asking my higher power to just channel my words of whatever somebody might need to hear in this room today and make it a bit less about me and my ego. Um, So it's really good to see some faces that I haven't seen for ages as well, and some familiar faces and familiar names as well from WhatsApp groups and outreach. It's always lovely to see people face to face on Zoom and in our little boxes at 7 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, I'm really grateful to be here. Grateful I woke up. And grateful to have had an abstinent, holiday season. Thank God. Yeah, a lot to be grateful for. So my story, I mean, welcome to anyone that's new for a start or coming back. And I've been both of those things. I've come back way more times than I came for the first time. And I think it's really hard to walk back into the rooms of OA. So if you're here as a newcomer, then a big welcome. And one of the things, actually, funny enough, when I did my two-way prayer this morning, that I very much got back from my higher power is to really talk about this morning how OA, I've not had a straight line in this fellowship. I did not come into this fellowship and say, Yahoo, there's a simple solution to my problem. I'm going to do those steps up on the wall there and I'm never going to eat again. That's not my experience. Maybe it is for some people, but mine's been a lot more protracted and a lot more full of struggles than that. And one of the things that's always been a very much an embodiment of my higher power is that I have always been welcomed back into the 12-step fellowships. I've always had a great crew of people that I can trust. I've always had good sound advice, and I've always been able to come back. And one of the things I really would always hope that I would do for somebody is always never be the reason that someone's not going to come back to OA. I've always welcomed someone back in. And each time I've done that, I've been able to start again with a fresh set of eyes. And one of my very favorite prayers in this program is the set aside prayer, which is to help me set aside everything I think I know. And I've been around the fellowship since I was 18 and I'm now 51. So there's a lot of stuff I've picked up. Some of it's helpful, some of it's not so helpful, and some of it I've had to lose along the way. Um, some of it stops being helpful. And that constant reminder that I don't always know what's best for me has been a really good one for me. It's been really good just to help me have a new experience each time. So as I said, I've been around the fellowship since I was 14. I believe I was born a compulsive eater. I cannot remember a time in my life I had a normal relationship with food. Right from the off, food did something for me that it doesn't do for normal eaters, and I kind of knew that right from the beginning, actually, and there was a real shame that went with that. When I was at school, I was bigger than a lot of the other kids, and I remember formative memories of just like games pants, not wanting to wear games pants because my legs were fat. So and that was when I was 5 or 6 when I look back. So really, my food issues have been part of my entire life, and I was taken to Weight Watchers when I was 10 by my mum. I look back now, I think, well, I've got my own kids. What the hell was she thinking? But I think 1970s, 80s mum. She wanted to sort of, there was a lot of emphasis on making me thin. She's just been staying the last few days. The first comments about my daughter's weight, it's like, well, they look well, they're a nice shape, or they're not a nice shape. So there was a lot of emphasis on that sort of stuff, and yeah, Weight Watchers for me, my experience with Weight Watchers was I didn't eat on a Tuesday. That's kind of the way I've always been with Pay and Weighs. I didn't eat on a Tuesday and I ate everything on a Wednesday because I'd been weighed for the week, so it was my sort of free day. So that didn't work very well. In fact, if anything, what it did was sort of compounded the shame and the guilt around what I did. And I was very overweight as an early teenager. So I'm 5'2" and I was about 13, 14 stone. So I think I've worked it out in pounds for the Americans. That's probably about 200 pounds or so. I stopped weighing myself, so I'm not even sure what my top weight was. But I certainly was very large for that size. And and then had a period in my teen years, which is kind of what sort of precipitated all of my 12-step stuff, was I had a period of anorexia. And that for me started with the 99th diet that I'd been on that year, and progressively cutting out more and more and more and more till I was eating like 200 calories a day, exercising obsessively, wouldn't eat the wrong type of Weight Watchers yogurts that my mum had bought, just completely rigidly, ruthlessly sort of stuck to it. And with that came a real sense of power, actually, a real sense of being in control, of being reasonably invincible, of finally cracking this, I've cracked this nut, and I never really had a period of eating normally in my entire life. I kind of went swinging from 14 stone down to 7 stone in within about 5 months. And everybody was very encouraging to start off with, and then they sort of realised that there's something a bit wrong here. And then I got a lot of pressure to eat. And I was describing to someone yesterday my sort of first binge was shocking to me. I lost it around a Sunday lunch and just ate. I just couldn't stop eating. And It was very logical to me just to stick my fingers down my throat. It was just felt like it was like absolutely inevitable. That's what you have to do then now. And the first time I did that was a very shocking thing. That it's just, we talk in the sort of doctor's opinion in the AA big book about, sort of to the alcoholic, their life becomes their normal one. And for me, that very quickly became my normal, was that I binged and I vomited, because I could sort of keep up the show. I could sort of, the external window dressing looked all right, but I could still eat whatever I wanted to. And it was like, I've always described it as like the crack cocaine behavior for me around food, is that I could literally have my cake and eat it. And so very quickly, that's what I did. And long story short, but I ended up in a treatment center when I was 18, 17, 18, not just for food, but for alcohol as well. And fortunately for me, it was a 12-step treatment center. And I got sober at that point. So I've been in the other fellowship for that long, and sort of came to OA-ish. And you know, I look back at that early time in OA. I was very scathing about OA. This was whatever it was, 30 years ago in London. There were plenty of meetings around. I used to sort of be very scathing and say, well, there's no recovery around. It's all, the recovery's in AA, and OA is just where I go to identify with my food. And I think that's probably very untrue. I think there probably was a lot of recovery around. I just chose to not really engage with it. Um, and Yeah, so I sort of did go to OA meetings. I don't really think I heard very much, to be honest. And I was certainly doing my own thing with food. I thought because I wasn't vomiting, I was abstinent. And I now look back and know that what I was doing around food was in no means what I would now call abstinent. I did everything I wasn't supposed to do in both fellowships. I went to a lot of meetings. I think that's about the only thing I did right. But I didn't really, I don't know why, but I didn't really take on board anything really about working the steps. That wasn't sort of, it was all about meetings and fellowship. And I got into a relationship pretty much straight away when I left treatment, and everything was all right for a while. I think the food was sort of reasonable because I was in this relationship and I wanted to be in that more than I wanted to be in the food. And yeah, and sort of ticked along. But when he ditched me, about a year later, I was straight back into restricting and then back into my bulimia, and that's sort of where I stayed for most of my 20s, really intermittently going to OA to try and sort of get a grip on myself, and not really getting very far. Um, I came back to OA in seriousness. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs because it's a very long, protracted story. But when I was 30 and I just had my first baby, and I think for me, and I know Alex from this time actually, it's funny looking at her face on the screen because we used to do meetings together down in Cornwall. But I think for me at the time, we both had babies. I used to look at this little girl and I used to think to myself, of binging, what am I going to teach her? What have I got? What have I got for her? And I came back to OA and addressed it with some, sort of a bit more seriousness, really. It was now sort of suddenly not really just all about me. And I think, one of the things I did early on then was I went to a big book study. I went to the Birmingham Convention, Coventry Convention, I reckon it is now, but the Birmingham Convention, and there was a 12-step. Sorry, there was a big book AA speaker from Canada who did a 12-step a big book study that weekend, and that was my. I found that just absolutely mind blowing. I was obviously familiar with the big book. I'd used it in AA, and to hear it translated for food, and to hear the physical allergy and the mental obsession, the step one stuff. And, for anybody that is new,
Two
this,
minutes.
thank you, as this sort of concept of that I had this physical abnormality, an abnormal reaction to food and particular substances. And he gave the most amazing description of eating goose fat and goose skin. And it was like that was absolutely my experience with some foods, is that once I'd eaten them, I couldn't stop. And for me as a bulimic as well, I will share this. I've had to really look at behaviors as well. So particular behaviors for me will precipitate the phenomenon of craving. I can't stop. So, for example, me being overfull, my husband will be overfull, he will stop eating. There is something about me being overfull where I just want to keep eating, and that's not a normal response, So that's my allergy to food. And coupled with that, I have this mental obsession, which means however I understand that, I will always, it's an inevitable fact. And it transformed my understanding of step one. Step one is not don't eat, don't eat. Step one for me is I am going to eat. I'm not done. I will never be done. I will inevitably always pick up that first bite because somehow in my brain, I will make it okay. I will make it a perfectly reasonable thing to take that first compulsive bite. Um, so that was my sort of my introduction to the big book. And again, I'd love to say it's been so. This is 20 years. I'm not going to get 20 years into 5 minutes, but it's very much been a story of relapse and recovery, very much so. And my last sort of major relapse was 8 years ago. I came back in 2017, and I now work my program very differently. I've had to. I would have shied away from the sort of recovery I do now. 10 years ago, I definitely would have thought I was a fanatic. I would have thought I was a bit extreme. I would have thought definitely what that's very black and white. I've sort of been driven to do what I do through necessity and actually through freedom. It gives me a lot of freedom from food obsession. And that's what I was always after. I didn't think, I thought the end game here was abstinence. I thought that was what it was all about. And I now know that my abstinence is my ticket into the door to be able to have access to and contact with my higher power. And that is the solution. That is the solution. It's conscious contact with my higher power. And the entire function, as far as I'm concerned, of the 12 steps is to get rid of anything that's not God, anything that's not higher power, such that I can be in companionship with my higher power. And there's a lot that's not God. There's a lot that I still need to do. It's not been, I think being in recovery, unfortunately, doesn't absolve you from life on life's terms. There's some difficult stuff. I've got 3 teenage kids. My marriage has not been easy the last 12, 24 months. That's definitely something I've been driven to another fellowship with that. I'm seeking some help with that. I've got an elderly mother who is not an easy person to deal with. I work, the life is lifey. And what I found is my 12-step program and my abstinence gives, and my higher power more than anything else, my contact with my higher power gives me the ability to do those things very imperfectly but without using food. And that's a miracle. That's an absolute miracle for someone who could not keep her head out of the toilet for more than a few hours at a time. For me to be navigating difficult things in life, and it's painful, it's like we used to eat for the effect of food. I used to use food as an anesthetic. It means that I don't have an anesthetic. I have to I have to feel things, and it's not always easy. But I do know now that the only way out is through, and to feel things is to have life's rich experience. And I can do that without food. I can do that without food, and I can do that with leaning on my higher power. And the more I lean on my higher power, the better it is, really, the more I get out the way. Um, so yeah, and higher power, I think when I came in, that was very confusing to me. I wasn't anti-God spirituality, but neither could I see how that was going to help me, particularly when I wanted to eat. And, again, my understanding, that real fundamental of step one is if I am absolutely doomed and I'm going to keep eating whatever happens, I have to find power greater than me. I am powerless, so I have to find power. And again, the 12 steps is designed to do that. And again, I do all sorts of things today that I wouldn't have done 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's been a very gradual process. And for me, this is where we really get to take what we like and leave the rest. I'm able to pursue anything that resonates for me. And I pick and choose, I really do. But what I can absolutely say today is I do have a concept of my higher power. I do have the ability to access that. I can get quiet, I can get guidance. I believe also that my higher power embodies itself. I have really good friends and a really good sponsor in this program who I believe my higher power speaks through. I hear amazing things on meetings, I hear amazing things on podcasts. And I really believe it's sort of like it's either God is if everything or is if it's nothing. It's like I need to go into my day with the expectation of finding God, finding my higher power. And when I do that, when I actively look for my higher power in situations, I will always find it. Um, and that's a thank you. Is that my time?
It's lovely.
Yeah, and that's yeah. So I think that's it's always difficult to condense 30 years of recovery and relapse into 15 minutes, but that's clearly what was meant to come out this morning. It's really good to be here, and it's a really good opportunity to do a bit of service around Christmas. And thank you all for listening.